Start this message today. We'll start in Ezekiel chapter 22 and verse 18. So, the title today is God Punishes to Refine. I guess I could turn on my mic here, even though you can probably hear me all right. At least I can hear myself. Punishments are made to refine one's behavior, not to harm a person. So you may have thought as a child, when you're receiving a punishment, it's like, why are you harming me? It's like, but really it's made to refine. At least when you get it from your parents, you know when it's coming. They give you a warning. William, Abigail. With God, it kind of just, you do something wrong and then it just kind of comes out of nowhere. You're just like, oh, my life is suddenly much harder than it used to be. And most time, you know why, as soon as it happens. And really, sometimes you look around and you're surrounded by that raging inferno. And that used to be your life. And, all you can do is say, this is fine. God will get me through this. This is fine. Speaking of fiery infernos, let's go into our chapter today, Ezekiel 22. Verse 18. Son of man, the house of Israel is to me become dross. They're all brass and tin and iron and lead in the midst of the furnace. They are even the dross of silver. So I don't know how many of you have experience in refining metals, but that's what this is talking about. The dross is usually described as unwanted elements in the essence of precious metals. And I mean, yes, usually iron, brass, tin, they can be useful. But when you're looking for silver, when you're looking for gold, it's not really what you're looking for. So, in many cases, it's when you mine ore, and these elements are in there. Bismuth, iron, lead, tin, ore. They all tend to be there. Carbon, things like that, and the silver's still in there. There's still some silver, but it's all covered up. It's not valuable because it's not refined. It's not pure. So moving on to the next verse. Well, I'll start again. Son of man, the house of Israel is to me become dross. All are brass and tin and iron and lead in the midst of the furnace. They are even the dross of silver. Therefore saith the Lord God, because ye are all become dross, behold, therefore I will gather you into the midst of Jerusalem. As they gather silver and brass and iron and lead and tin into the midst of the furnace, to blow fire upon it, to melt it, so will I gather you in mine anger and my fury, and I will leave you there and melt you. Yea, I will gather you, and behold you in the fire of my wrath, and ye shall be melted in the midst thereof. As silver is melted in the midst of the furnace, so shall ye be melted in the midst thereof. And ye shall know that I, the Lord, have poured out my fury upon you. Yes. Quite an intense verse here. Because Israel is having impurities, God will refine them. He'll melt them down. Proverbs chapter 25:4 says, take away the dross from the silver, and there shall come forth a vessel for the finer. Earlier in the text in Ezekiel, it speaks on how Israel and Judea were guilty of murder, idolatry, disobedience to the parents, oppression, and extortion, so taking advantage of the poor and less fortunate, and opposing all things God said they ought to do. They are unclean and lewd, and most of all, they had forgotten God. So in Psalms 119, 119, when you hear the verse, "Thou puttest away all the wicked of the earth like dross, therefore I love thy testimonies," it makes a little bit more sense once you understand what dross is. It is the unwanted elements of what should be pure. Therefore, I love thy testimonies. Well, we'll get into that. It's talking about how I love how these impure things are put into the fiery furnace of God. And then when they come out, they're pure. I love thy testimonies. Our next verse will be in Jeremiah 6:27. Jeremiah 6:27 says, "I have set thee for a tower and a fortress among my people, that thou mayest know and try their way. They are all grievous revolters, walking with slanders. They are brass and iron. They are all corrupters." Notice, brass and iron are corrupters of what should be pure. 29. The billows are burned. The lead is consumed in the fire. The founder melteth in vain, for the wicked are not plucked away. Retrograde silver shall men call them, because the Lord hath rejected them. So what this speaks of is a process called cupellation, however you want to pronounce it. It's when you use lead, uh, which becomes oxidized, and it bonds with all the metals that are in there, the iron, the tin, the brass, but it doesn't bond with silver and gold because they don't react as much as the others. So you use the lead, it's oxidized, and usually the lead is absorbed into a crucible, usually made out of either clay or bone crushed up. And the crucible, or as now they call it a couple, it's just a little clay cup with a little divot in there. You put your metals in the divot, and as the metal is melted, uh, the lead bonds with it, the oxidized metals as they become melted, and it gets seeped into the crucible. So when it says the lead is consumed by the fire, that's what it's talking about. The founder melteth in vain. Why is he melting in vain? Because for the wicked are not plucked away. So the tin and the iron, as this verse puts it, the brass and iron are not taken away from the silver and gold. It's useless. It's not working for some reason. And because of this, God calls them retrograde silver, meaning they won't become pure because the Lord rejects them. So may I use this time to come to you to ask, plead with you to become pure, become pure. You might go through these trials, and you might want to reject God. That might be your flesh's desire to reject God. But I plead with you, lest you be cast away. Heed the melting, heed the trial, and learn from it. Psalms 37 says, "Fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be cut down like grass and wither as the green herb." Psalms 37 is one of my favorite verses in the Bible, chapters. It talks about how evildoers, they claim this world for now. There will come a point where those evildoers are cut down, that they are cut with their own sword, impaled. And the meek, the lowly, the wise, the ones that follow God will inherit the earth one day. So fret not. Don't worry about, as you're going through this fiery torment, this trial, you look out and see the world enjoying themselves. For it's just for a season. Their reign is just for a season. God will try them as well. Lamentations 4:1. How has the gold become dim? How has the most fine gold changed? The stones of the sanctuary are poured out in the top of every street. The precious sons of Zion, comparable to fine gold, how how are they esteemed as earthen pitchers, the work of the hands of a potter. This is actually, though Jesus says we should be like pottery, we should be worked by the hands of God. This is actually God is condemning the people of Israel. You see, when God works, he likes to work with gold. Chronicles 2, 2 Chronicles 24:14. And when they had finished it, they brought the rest of the money before the king of Jehoiada. Wherefore were made vessels of the house, vessels for the house of the Lord, even vessels to minister and to offer withal, and spoons and vessels of gold and silver, as they offered burnt offerings in the house of the Lord continually all the days of Jehoiada. God likes to work in gold. When he forges something, he likes to use gold and silver, not earth, the tin, iron, clay. He doesn't really like those. It needs to be gold. It has to be pure for God to accept it. You remember the story of Cain and Abel, how Cain's offering was not accepted because it wasn't pure. It wasn't what God asked for. So it was an offering in disobedience. You may try to offer your best to God, but it's just earthen pitchers. You drop them and they break. Gold, silver pitchers, when you drop them, they don't break. Proverbs 17:3. The finding pot is for silver, the furnace is for gold, but the Lord trieth hearts. See, God here explains this allegory, this metaphor for your heart is the silver. It's the gold that God is after. And might even be the dross. And God will put your heart in through the fire to melt it down and purify it. Isaiah 48:10. Behold, I have refined thee, but not with silver. I have chosen thee in the furnace of affliction. So as you go through the Bible, you start to understand, man, these trials, these afflictions, they are not to punish you; they are to refine you. I beseech you, brethren, Romans 12:1. I beseech you, brethren. Oh, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that ye present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. So, will you throw your old man into the fire as a burnt offering? Basically, is what that verse is saying. You know, you have these sins, these spots, these growths that aren't supposed to be there, and you need to cut them off or melt them down and remove them from yourselves. So the song we sang before this service, "Cleanse Me" or "Search Me, O God," however you want to refer to it. Think about the verses the next time you sing it. Know my heart today. Try me, O Savior. Know the thoughts I pray. See if there be some wicked way in me. Cleanse me from every sin and set me free. You go in stanza 2. I praise thee, O Lord, for cleansing me from sin. Fulfill thy word and make me pure within. Fill me with fire, for once I burn with shame. Grant me the desire to magnify thy name. So as you go throughout life, and you may see the world enjoying themselves, not having any troubles, and you're just You're going through it. I mean, you're hanging on for dear life, and the world seems to be laughing at you, mocking you. Just remember that you're going through this for a purpose. You're going through this to be refined. You know, this idea of purifying metals goes all the way back. I mean, they found evidence of it in Sumer, which is 4,000 4,000 years before Christ. I mean, it's one of the earliest civilizations. Nimrod. It's around that time, and it probably goes beyond that. So this is one of the purest illustrations that I could think of. Anyways, and that's all I really have for tonight. And speaking of being tried with fire, uh, my dad's going to do the prayer meeting here. So be nice to him. He can hardly hear, so speak loud. It is.